Hi, and welcome back to English Lessons with Stephanie. This is reading lesson 14, Education. In this lesson, we'll do a guided paragraph by paragraph reading. You can practice reading out loud by listening to each paragraph first, then pausing the video at the end of each paragraph and reading out loud for yourself. We'll use the GASP method of guessing, answering questions, summarizing, and predicting. The GASP method will help us to read faster. As we read, you should mark words or phrases that you don't understand, guessing at the meanings for now. We will try to answer any questions you might have. You can use a dictionary, you can look up phrases online, or just ask someone for help. At the end of each paragraph, we'll summarize. That means we'll give the main idea of that paragraph. And then we'll predict what we think we'll read about in the next paragraph. Let's begin. The education system in the United States can be somewhat confusing. This is because education is managed by a combination of local and state policies and consists of a mix of public and private institutions. Let's start with the first sentence. The first sentence says that the education system in the U.S. can be somewhat confusing. Do you agree with this? Are you confused by the education system in the United States? The next sentence tells us that education is managed by a combination of local and state policies. So you'll remember that combination means things are mixed together. The word local is talking about things that are near to you, and state has to do with the larger region. What do you think the word policies means? And how about institutions? What are institutions? This second sentence says a lot more than it looks like. It talks about two different types of policies, local policies and state policies. Local and state are two adjectives that both describe the noun policies. So instead of saying local policies and state policies, we just say local and state policies. And then this is also true with public and private institutions. This means public institutions and private institutions. So in this sentence, we're really talking about four different things that influence education in the United States. So take a guess as to what you think policies are and institutions. Because this first paragraph is only 2 sentences, it can be easy to summarize. You could say the main idea is the first sentence, or you could say that the main idea is the first sentence plus the second sentence, that the U.S. education system is confusing because all of this. Here's our second paragraph. Primary education. Education can start as young as 2 years old with preschool, which in most states is not mandatory nor covered by the state. After preschool comes kindergarten, usually at the age of 5. Oftentimes, preschools and kindergartens are only half a day or part of a day. Then the numerical grades begin. First grade is the start of what some call grade school or elementary school. Some grade schools are 1st through 5th grade, while others are 1st all the way through 12th. If a grade school ends in 5th or 6th grade, students typically move up to a middle school or junior high school. So first of all, this paragraph has a title in italics, primary education. This tells us the main topic of this paragraph. So let's start with the first sentence. What does the underlying phrase mean? As young as 2 years old. Does this mean when children are younger than 2 or when children are at least 2 years old? Remember, as young as is one of our comparative phrases. And if it says as young as, that means equal to 2 years old. So this means the second choice, when children are at least 2. So preschool is what we call the earliest school. And in most states, it's not mandatory nor covered by the state. What do you think mandatory means? Do you think it means that it is required or it is not required? It is necessary or not necessary? Well, because in the negative, it's not mandatory. We could guess that mandatory means required. So in most states, it's not required. And then covered. Covered here means paid for, nor is the negative form of not plus or. So it is not mandatory. It is also not covered by the state, paid for by the state. Next in the paragraph, we see some words in bold. Kindergarten, grade school, elementary school, middle school, and junior high school. These are all names of types of schools. So here we can say that the main topic of this paragraph is primary education. And specifically, what are we talking about in primary education? Well, it's just basically an explanation of the structure or the shape of primary education in the US. Now predict what you think we'll read about in the next paragraph. That's right, secondary education. That comes after primary education. So let's read this paragraph. High school consists of grades 9 through 12. Oftentimes, we refer to these grades as freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior years of high school. About 90% of American students attend public schools during these years. The remaining 10% attend private schools, some of which may be boarding schools. While public school is free to attend, students are expected to pay for their own school supplies and sometimes their own transportation. Additionally, other activities like sports and arts may involve other fees. So this paragraph also has a title in italics, secondary education. So we can see that this word secondary has the word second in it, which means two. In this paragraph, we see other terms in bold: high school, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. 9th grade is also called freshman year, 10th grade is sophomore year, 11th is junior, and 12th is senior year. In the second paragraph, we again see the words private and public. If you're not sure what private and public mean, take a closer look here. Public school is free to attend, and most students go to public school. So we can guess that public school is a school that's for most people or for everyone. Only 10% of students attend private schools, so private schools are for a smaller percentage of the population. Some of these private schools are boarding schools. What do you think boarding schools are? So public school is free, but students are expected to pay for their own school supplies and their own transportation sometimes. What do you think supplies are? Additionally means also or more so. Students also might do activities like sports and arts that have other fees. So if you don't know what fees are, look at the word other. Other means that we've talked about something similar here. So what are we talking about that could be other? Well, in the sentence before this, it talks about how students pay for their own supplies and sometimes their transportation. So fees means things we might have to pay for sports and arts. Here's a question to reflect on. Do students in your country mostly attend private or public school? So now summarize this paragraph and predict what you think we'll read about in the next paragraph. Post-secondary education. About 66% of high school graduates go on to post-secondary education or higher education. In 2019, 36% of Americans over the age of 25 had a bachelor's degree, typically obtained after 4 years in college. A bachelor's degree is also called an undergraduate degree, and college students are referred to as undergraduates. About 13% go on to then obtain graduate degrees at universities. Oftentimes, colleges and universities share the same campus, with younger and older students mixing and sometimes taking the same classes. This paragraph also has a title, Post-Secondary Education. Post is a common prefix that means after. So post-secondary means after secondary. And in the first sentence, we see two different terms, post-secondary education and higher education. These two terms mean the same thing. Or here it means also known as or also called. So 66% of high school graduates go on to post-secondary education, also called higher education, and this just means some kind of college. So 36% of Americans have a bachelor's degree, which they obtain after 4 years in college. So there are many types of degrees, and a bachelor's degree is a degree you can get from a 4-year college. What word do you think you could put here instead of obtained? Here we can see some other terms. We see the phrase undergraduate degree, and you can see that this has a prefix under. Under means below or younger here, so undergraduate is below or before graduating. And then we see the difference between colleges and universities. So a college comes first, then you get a bachelor's degree, and a university comes next. Oftentimes, colleges and universities share the same campus. The campus is the physical school, the buildings, the location. So let's reflect. How many people in your country go to college or have college degrees? And you can think about this in terms of percent. Do you think it's more than in America? Is it more than 36%? Or do you think it's less than 36%? So we're not going to predict what we're going to read about in the next page because the next page will continue with the same paragraph. So this sentence is part of the paragraph before it. In college, students are asked to choose a major to focus on. Majors can range from general, e.g. math or English, to much more specific, e.g. law enforcement, record keeping, and evidence management. Majors vary widely by school. Okay, so this is the next paragraph. U.S. colleges maintain international appeal for the quality of education, but this quality comes at a price far higher than in most other countries. While public primary and secondary education is free, public post-secondary education is not. Okay, so this first part is the end of the first paragraph that talks about college. So we end by talking about majors. What do you think a major is? And it says that majors are something we focus on. And in the next sentence, it says majors can range from general to specific. So we learned that the word specific means something very detailed or just for one purpose. And general here is the opposite of that. So when we use the word range, we say range from this, we start here, or go to here, range from general to specific. And it gives us examples of general majors, like math or English, and then a more specific major, law enforcement, record keeping, and evidence management. This is the name of one major. And majors vary widely by school. These are the last three sentences of the paragraph before. So I can help you to summarize here. This is an introduction to post-secondary education or higher education. That means talking about college. And we talked about colleges, degrees, universities, and majors. Just the general structure of higher education in the US. Then in this next paragraph, we introduce the idea of paying for your education. So let's reflect. Is college free in your country? Because in the US, this quality comes at a price far higher than in most other countries. This means that college in the US is very expensive. In this last paragraph, we see the word appeal. Hopefully you remember this word from class 13, means something that you really like. So US colleges maintain international appeal, right? That means many people from other countries like US colleges. Let's predict what we'll read about in the rest of this paragraph. The average cost of obtaining an undergraduate degree in the US is about $21,000 a year at a public college and more than twice that amount at a private one. This figure includes tuition as well as room and board. While many students are able to earn money for college through scholarships, grants, or part-time jobs, many more are forced to take out costly loans to pay for their education or assume a large amount of credit card debt. The average U.S. college student graduates with more than $30,000 in debt. Despite these steep costs, more and more students continue to pursue college degrees. In this last paragraph, we continue to talk about the cost of education in the U.S., and it gives us some prices. $21,000 a year at a public college, and more than twice that amount at a private one. So more twice means 2 times. So at least $42,000 a year at a private college. And this word figure means number. It's another word for number. So this number, this price, includes tuition. Tuition is how much you pay for classes, as well as room and board, as well as means also. And then room and board is kind of a phrase put together. We talked about boarding schools earlier, and boarding schools are places where you live and eat while you go to school. So when we say the phrase room and board, we also mean how we live and how we eat. Then we learn that students can make money, they can earn money for college through scholarships, grants, or part-time jobs. So we know what jobs are, but scholarships and grants are other ways for students to make money for school. Then it says other students can take out costly loans. This is another vocabulary word that we learned, loans. That means something you borrow in order to pay back later. And then it also says that students can assume a large amount of credit card debt. So look at this word debt. What do you think debt is? Do you think it's money you must repay later or money you must use per year? That means every year. Well, here we're talking about loans. We're also talking about credit cards. So debt is the first answer, money you must repay later. You might remember the vocabulary word average. Average means typical. So here the typical US student graduates with more than $30,000 in debt. So that is a lot of money that students need to pay back after they leave college. But in the last sentence, despite these steep costs, what do you think the word steep means if it's referring to costs? Are we talking about really high costs here or really low costs? All right, so we're talking about really high costs. So steep means really high. Really high costs. More and more students continue to pursue college degrees. Okay, so now we've come to the end of our reading. To review, you should summarize what you've read and then go back and review any parts you're still confused about. You can also look up words in a dictionary and continue with this class's writing and speaking lessons, because in the writing class, we're going to talk about all this vocabulary in more detail. There is also a reflection question that you can think about. How is the US education system similar and different to the education system in your country? So that's it for reading lesson 14. If you're enjoying these free lessons, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.